I think the common misconception might be, oh, I'm returning home. It's familiar. I'm not even second guessing that it's going to be a relatively easy process to transition because it's, well, home. First thing, don't go home with this mindset. Hey, it's me, AbbyP. Thanks for still being here. This video will explore the reality of returning to your home country after living abroad for some time. And this video can apply to anyone that has lived in any country that was not their own, not only Korea. If my videos inspired you to live in Korea, or if you are living in Korea now, these may be some possible things to think about upon your return home. Please also note, in these kinds of videos, not everything may apply to every single person watching this video, because we're all different and have our own personalities, experiences, thoughts, and perceptions, so take whatever is helpful for you. First, some terminology. Expat, short for expatriate, a person who lives outside their native country. Repatriation, the return of someone to their own country. So in my case, I was an expat or an expatriate for 6 years living in South Korea. I went through repatriation a year ago in 2021 when I returned to my home country of the United States. From 2019, I was starting to deeply question my residence in Korea, and pandemic was the catalyst for my decision to return. I think the common misconception might be, oh, I'm returning home. It's familiar. I'm not even second guessing that it's going to be a relatively easy process to transition because it's, well, home. First thing, don't go home with this mindset. Be prepared for the possibility that in actuality, it can be a very strange time in what you thought would be a familiar place. The longer you were away from home, the more changes may have occurred. Changes in you, changes in the people that you knew, your relationships with them, and in the places you were familiar with back home. Common repatriation experiences include reverse culture shock, and also reestablishing yourself just as you did when you first moved away, so we'll be focusing on those things in this video. Take some time to consider before you do move back what sort of issues might come up and how might you deal with them. There may be a honeymoon phase when you first move back, just as there was a honeymoon phase when you first started living abroad. But what will you do when that honeymoon phase is over? What will you do with your life now that you're back? It can be a new, exciting adventure and or an anxiety-filled, nerve-wracking endeavor. I would say, starting off, have a plan, especially if you are a natural planner, and this stems off of knowing what to expect. If you're someone who naturally just goes with the flow, not having set plans and keeping your options open may be helpful for you. But again, as long as you at least know what to expect. Now, as someone that is typically well prepared as I am, I regrettably admit that I went out of character and was not prepared for repatriation, or rather, I didn't think it would be an issue upon my return. Therefore, I didn't really make any set plans in regards to my future or life path in America. My only solid plans were to be home with my family, eat my parents' cooking, and take a fatty rest from my time in Korea, especially during the pandemic. And I'd say these plans were reasonable considering the isolation and exhaustion from Korean life amidst the pandemic, so simply resting at home was sufficient, but only for a time. Reverse culture shock examples coming back to the US after living in Korea for a long time include things such as, there's way too many people not wearing their mask here. The workers are so slow. Please, no small talk. Oh my god, why does the waiter come when my mouth is full? Oh right, we have to tip again. Why is this worker treating me completely different than the previous customer? It's because I'm Asian? Why is this stranger smiling at me? I don't want to smile back. Please, no small talk. Americans' go-to pleasantry is, how are you? And I had to get used to saying, I'm good, and you? Or as Koreans like to say, I'm fine, thank you, and you? Versus, how are you? Well, let me stop and think about how I am doing. I'm neither good nor bad. As such, it would be superficial of me to respond with either. In fact, I'm currently merely existing and pondering my life's direction in this strange yet familiarly strange environment that I'm now residing in. Regardless, I'm okay. In Korea, the question, how are you or how are you doing, isn't really a thing. So I quickly began to notice how much I was being asked this question when I returned back home. I will probably make another separate video in regards to reverse culture shock between the US and South Korea, because there are so many fun things to talk about. For the sake of this video though, I will just say expect the typical American friendliness and pleasantries again, And on the other hand, ironically, the generally more individualistic mindset of the American people versus the more collectivist mindset of Korea and a lot of other Asian countries. Pandemic, of course, added on to the cultural frustrations, so it really depends too on the state of the entire world even, or the current situation of the country that you're going back to, whether economically or whatever. For example, nowadays gas prices here in my home state of California, $5 to $6 a gallon. That's expensive. Another example is driving in my car and turning on some popular radio station and not recognizing most of the trendy music that is being played. So typically I will listen to my own music that I can control, which consists more of old angsty emo music or house music. So all these things can factor into your repatriation experience. As long as you are aware of and understand the cultural differences, then you'll have less of a difficult time adjusting. Reestablishing yourself again. Like reverse culture shock, reestablishing yourself requires a good deal of patience and understanding in all aspects. Some may know exactly what they want to do when they go back home again, and others may float around for some time until they figure out exactly what it is they want to do. There really isn't any sort of set solution because it all depends on yourself and your own situation. I know of some expats who immediately started working again right after they returned home. Some who were teachers in Korea and continued teaching when they came back to America. Some who went on completely different career paths altogether. And some eventually left and lived abroad again because ultimately they decided that home wasn't the same place anymore and they couldn't readjust after all. Since my return, I took the year figuring that all out. On the surface, it was a period of rest for me, and underneath that, it was hugely a time of deep reflection of myself and my life, my time in Korea, and my 2 years of isolation basically during pandemic. These viruses and all of the aftermath that followed, though a traumatic and tragic global event, was not only the catalyst to my return home, but it also ignited my metamorphosis, I guess you could say. I think a lot of people changed in their own ways during that time, and isolation in itself can be very harmful to your well-being if done for an unhealthily long period of time. So on one end, I experienced my own darkness, which stemmed from being lost on the path of life upon my return. On the other end, the isolation was actually pretty awesome because when you are truly focusing only on yourself, you go through this incredible process of unlearning and unbecoming anything that isn't really you. Depression is also another common experience in the repatriation process. So it is something to expect. Mental health can be one of your biggest battles. Everyone goes through depression to varying degrees in their life, and it manifests in different ways for each. So depression for me isn't a new thing because it's something that I've just been experiencing again and again throughout my life. So it's not something that I fear or misunderstand anymore. It's best to acknowledge it and sit with it as needed. Don't rush it, but also don't spend too much time with it either. Finding balance is always one of life's biggest challenges, so make finding that balance one of your biggest priorities during this readjustment period, because without it, you will stay lost and wandering with no purpose. So this is where the effort comes in, whether it's with updating your resume, applying to jobs, getting back into the American workforce, studying, reading, going back to school, engaging in the present with hobbies and activities that put you in a flow, and in time you can find yourself again. Part of me felt a void in not creating videos as consistently because that's what I do. I make videos, so it doesn't make sense for a video creator to not create videos, right? In looking back at older videos of myself on this channel as well, it was the same strange experience of foreign yet familiar, very much like the repatriation process. It's like when you see old photos and videos of yourself, it's as if you're looking at a completely different person, but the fact is, it's you. So I had to go through that process, the cringe of facing myself, basically accepting and then letting go, not only of that old self, but of any sort of lingering negativity or misconceptions that may have existed, so that I can come back without any inhibitions and do what I've always done, which is make videos and create content. Granted, I was still using my creativity in other ways, such as cosplay and live streaming on Twitch. So considering the time frame, it took me a whole year to adjust, which includes living space, finances, relationship with friends and family, etc., in addition to figuring out the meaning of life. I was able to stay consistent with my basic needs and physical health, which is highly underestimated, not only for expats, but for people in general, as I'm discovering. Getting health insurance was one of my top priorities in coming back to the US, so I did that within the first couple months in case I got injured, but we're not going to talk about my skateboarding injury today. Health checks and blood tests are also great once you do get your health insurance, because you can then see a breakdown of what your body may be deficient in, so you can take the steps to give your body what it needs to function at its best. This is gonna sound so cliche and super basic, but drinking water, hydrating enough daily, eating healthy, exercising regularly, make these habits all parts of finding that balance through healthy routines. These are small things, but I make it a point to do these small things, like make my bed when I get up in the morning, brush and floss my teeth every night before I go to bed, taking care of my cats daily. I've learned to designate specific days of rest and only rest, which I would have never known if I hadn't experienced burnout. These small things provide me that evidence, that daily evidence that I am still sane and taking care of myself and my life. Overall, the expat experience is already an isolating and lonely one in itself, because chances are when you go back home, you're not going to meet a lot of people who share the same experiences of living abroad as you. Meeting new people in general is more difficult to do, especially as you age older into adulthood. The internet is your friend, so you have forums and Reddit and Discord and YouTube. You can find other expats online or simply read about their experiences. In the description box of this video, I've listed blogs of repatriation and the expat experience. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this video is helpful for you, and feel free to share your own experiences in regards to this topic in the comments below. So I hang out a lot more on Twitch these days, and it's how I've met a lot of new people in the last year, so if you'd like to come hang out with me, feel free to give me a follow on there as well.